Can you take us briefly through the 4 steps of setting up a growth team?
I think first of all, one of the things that people so often do when they come into a new growth organization is they just immediately think about, I got to fill these seats. And they jump right to kind of the end. And the reality is there's a lot of different ways to hire and staff your team. And so the first part of the process, the foundation, is really assessing what you need on your team. And you do that by thinking about the problems that you're trying to solve and not necessarily specific skills that you think you need in the company. The next thing to do is to understand the different paths that are available to you to actually staffing a growth team. If something is new and unproven, you don't want to spend the time to hire a bunch of full-time resources against that. So there's an evolution that you can go through where you kind of start with people who are internal to the company and spending some of their time on an initiative. As that initiative gets to be more successful, you put more dedication and more of those internal resources. Then you maybe augment with external resources. And then finally, you make external hires where you bring in new expertise into the company. You don't have to follow that path rigidly around staffing, but that is a path that you can go through. The third step is when you're starting to actually build out that team, you need to think about those different profiles that you need. That's the builder, the optimizer, and the innovator. And you also need to think about and use the growth competency model to figure out the skills that you need each of those people to have, depending on your stage and what your growth model looks like and how much it needs to change. And finally, you need to think about the organizational structure that is right for your company. Are you kind of just getting started and you need to move super fast? And so a centralized growth team is the right way to do that, to minimize sideways decision making, to minimize the number of people that have to be along for the ride? Or are you becoming a bottleneck to progress? And actually, you need a more decentralized structure over time, more distributed growth culture across the company. And one of these organizational structures is not what the company needs forever. Companies will move through these stages and will kind of move back and forth depending on some different variables around velocity, around culture, around whether or not you're the bottleneck to progress. And so one of the things I think we want to understand when we form our teams is that it's still fluid. It's never fixed. And just like growth itself, it's not rigid. It's not set in stone, never to be revisited. As you grow, things will need to change again, and you may need to go through this cycle one more time.